Thank you very much, Amadou. It was a wonderful introduction, very much of a kind. Welcome. Thank you very much for having me here. The Unstoppables, amazing picture. I've never seen something like this before. I thought it was a serious company. I know more about it now. Amadou asked me to come over here to give an external perspective, and he basically pointed out I look like a banker, I act probably a little bit crazy, but the really common thing between Amadou and hopefully you guys over here is that I have a tremendous passion for digitalization, and that basically is due to my age, that I started working in '93, and is actually for a Usenet company. And some of you may, if they're old enough, they may know the predecessor of the internet, pre-browser. And basically in that year, Netscape was created, so the colorful internet. And that time, as of that moment, my entire professional life, but also my private life, was somehow intertwined with digitalization. And basically, what I presented here for 40 minutes, give you the experience which we made over the last 24, 23 years, what we believe currently are the trends which will impact any industry. And it's kind of a bold move, so you may have a different view. Please chat to me afterwards. I'm very open for suggestions. However, we're doing this now, and it started 10 years ago that actually one of the largest conglomerates, a DAX value, a DAX stock-quoted company, came to us or came to me and said, listen, I'm very sick of your presentations and your ideas about changing the world, and particularly telling us that we're too small, too large, not digital enough, not crazy innovative. And then you put all those pages of scaring the shit out of us, and we hate that. We just don't like it. It's very negative. It doesn't feel well. So can you do something more positive? And that's actually why the idea of creating 8 trends started, by showing something on a very anecdotal basis, how the world is changing. And you know, if this kind of gives you an idea or some motivation to incorporate that into your daily life, into your corporate life, then it would probably I would have achieved something very, very interesting. But just, you know, keep an open mind, and I'll talk you through this. I have the green button, right? So basically 8 trends, and they're never more. They always stay 8, so I can stay focused with that. So one of the biggest, for me, trend, which is usually very tricky to explain, is the triple play. And triple play is what I mean by combining, you know, a good digital solution. And if you scale it down to your business, to any other business in the world, whether it's B2C, B2B, it's always a combination between software, hardware, and services. And that's what we probably call a platform or a system, an ecosystem whatsoever. If you find a perfect combination thereof, it makes a hell of a lot of sense. Apple, I think, has done it for the B2C world in a perfect manner. iTunes Store as a platform, Apple, the iPhone, as the hardware device, and software as the underlying, the operating system. So you see that, but also in other companies. So I'm currently, next week I'm traveling with the CEO and the owner, and one of the owners of Leica cameras, to China. They faced the biggest challenge after they have almost lost the companies 10 years ago because of the Japanese camera producers. They faced the biggest challenge to ask themselves, do we have to have an own operating system on our cameras and allow innovation, third-party products, applications, access to the photos, access to technology on the camera? It's a huge question which not only probably you will ask yourself, but also Porsche, Volkswagen, anyone who actually operates B2C business models is asking that questions. And let me give you a very, for me, one of the most exciting examples. When I was holding the keynote for the industry summit at Handelsblatt last year, there were 600 people from the industry. And I asked, who's actually having a bidirectional path or communication to their products, to their services, to their customer, by doing it constantly monitoring and knowing what the customer is doing? There was only one woman raising her hand, and she was running the digital business of Klaas Mähdrescher, the mowing machines. And you see it over here. And for me, it's a privately owned company somewhere in the middle of Westfalen. They have, when I approached the lady and I said, so tell me a little bit how the business has changed. It's like, well, it's very simple. 10 years ago, when somebody came to us, wanted to buy a lawnmower, he basically said, I need a lawnmower, I need a leasing contract, and could I include services? So that was the key question, interface to the customer. Today, the customer is an average 40 years old, has studied business and any agricultural other course. Secondly, he asked the question, I'm buying my seed, my crop, at Monsanto, which gives me 2.5% more productivity every year. If I buy your class machinery, how much efficiency can I improve on my field? So it's a completely different question. And basically what I'm trying to say with the triple play, any of our customers, whether it's us as bankers, you as being in logistics, or a machinery manufacturer, the most fundamental change which has happened over the last 10, 15 years is a change of consumer behavior, whether B2C or whether B2B. And that's so fundamentally because it's a preconditioning of your brain due to the mobile device. Those little things in our hand, which you probably have in front of you, you look into this, you keep it 24/7, has changed interface to business, to communication whatsoever. And you see that, I think, for me, one of the perfect examples. And you see how they actually do this. Class now is not a metal manufacturing business anymore. It's a software, telemetric, and satellite business. I mean, just think about this. 10 years ago, it was metal manufacturing. They're even in the wrong union to look at this. The third one is mobile only. It's nothing really new what you heard, but I believe the mobile will be the predominant tool of work and private interaction for us in the future, and that will stay for the foreseeable future. What does that imply? It implies that we have to design mobile-only products and not internet, web products and then translate it into mobile. And last night, by chance, I had the opportunity to check the German iTunes store for DHL apps. And I don't know whether you have done it, but I saw 19 DHL apps, which pretty much look the same. But when you go into them, a third approximately are sponsoring apps. So you sponsor something and you put some content on there and it's fun pictures and you give some information what you have sponsored, whether it's Formula One, whether it's a restaurant concept, whatsoever. So that's probably more a marketing thing. The other 2/3 should somehow have a functionality. And I thought the most interesting one was where you actually contract your shipments. So then you have a software, hardware, services component, so it actually makes sense. But the interesting part is, it looks like that just looking at the App Store, that you decentralized in developing different solutions on a mobile device, so you see the urgency and the necessity. However, you don't put this on a system, on a platform, by basically saying, listen, this needs to be different function, different solutions, needs to be unified on one platform, running on a mobile phone whatsoever. So I think that was an interesting way. You know, you're a big company, you have hundreds of thousands of employees, you're decentralistic, it looks at least when you look at your software. It's something where we believe if you start creating mobile-only solution, this is what will change the entire DNA of thinking, because you work on 6-inch. Your mind needs to work on 6-inch. That's why Apple is doing a great job, because they're training their engineers to put this in a little watch like this. Just imagine if you would be a software engineer or you would be a department where Amadou tells you, I want a tracking app on the Apple Watch. How much constraints you have to face to figure out a sensible, useful application for that watch. So basically what I'm trying to say, and I wrap this up on the mobile side, and I give you an example, and you've seen that 1,000 times. We are in the fourth revolution, industrial revolution, and 2005, it's not that far ago. You know, when the Pope was basically, everybody was announced for the Pope. You see 2005, nothing. 2013, it's a completely different. And that's young, old, a mixture whatsoever. And you may say as a B2B or a B2B2C company, it doesn't really impact me. That's wrong. That's absolutely wrong, because your customers, your suppliers, anyone you're involved with is impacted on a change of behavior because of mobile devices. Also, for me, always a great example of what mobile actually has impacted. You remember in 2012, Facebook announced their IPO, and it was very critical. It was overvalued for everyone, and people thought that's never going to work out. And at that time, they had zero sales in mobile. They didn't even have a decent mobile product. And see what's happening in that red line over here today, or it's end of last year. I haven't really updated it, but you see what actually happened. This now, it's a 2/3 mobile. It's a pure play company. Why? They have employed 100 people externally. They have never worked at Facebook before, nor on the website or any other code they created, only to do mobile applications. They have never seen any code of what existed before. It's like, we want a mobile-only product. Focus on how our 600,000 consumers, where we can do relevant changes. And that was a very smart move. And you see the success, I think, very well over here. New ownership. It's one of my most I'm 47 years old. For me, this is the most irritating trend. And I would like to talk it away, but it doesn't work. So basically what happens is, 10 years ago, it started with sharing and collaboration. And I probably have seen that with your kids, that they started sharing stuff on the internet, on Facebook, on Instagram, whatsoever. And it scared the hell out of you. And it's like, why do you actually do this? Why do you put so much private life into the public internet? So basically, what that translates into is that we have a very new ownership structure. And these are the people from 15 to 36 have completely a different understanding of ownership. Take cars. Could you ever have thought that you will give away your car and rent it on a daily basis like BlaBlaCar in France is doing? Can you think of the young people when they turn 18? It's not the biggest desire anymore to have a Golf GTI. They just don't care anymore to have a car. They want a car-to-go cart. That's all they need. But also on real estate, I don't know whether you have ever rented an Airbnb apartment. I mean, think of this. Would you ever give away your apartment to somebody you don't know on a daily basis when you're not around? I would have never done it. For me, impossible as a thought. And I saw the business plan on my table actually 10 years ago, and I said, this is the probably dumbest idea I've ever seen, Airbnb. And you see what has happened with the company. It's a 10 billion more very profitable business. But also in music. You know, I collected my CDs whenever I changed apartments or houses. I used DHL to carry all those heavy boxes. It was good for you. But really, that changed. We really don't own the things anymore as we used to. And that will go on with data. We used to have our own data center. Now it's external with Amazon. You can take that in anywhere in the world, and I don't know where it's leading to, but it means a completely different way of behavior of people we're dealing with in the future. And you've seen it. It's Spotify, dress coded. You can rent dresses of other people. I mean, just think of this. It's just amazing, but it works. People feel very comfortable with the new notion of ownership. So just information, which I always find very interesting. WeWork is a co-working space, started in New York, now came also to Germany, in Berlin with their first property. It's a very simple business model. It's Regus, just better. Just think about this. Regus has been in the place, and we know this since ages. When you probably have opened up somewhere new offices around the world and needed somebody quick, you went to Regus. Nowadays, everybody goes to WeChat. Why? They added another service onto the hardware and built a platform out of it. Why? They said, we will control the quality of people who are coming to our short-term lease, so quality of tenants. And secondly, we create a community that they actually can interact and have a benefit from each other. Could have Regos done it? Yes, they could. Have they done it? No. It's very difficult to get a Regos office. On WeChat, I have an app. I can hire it on my way to New York and have an office for the next month, 3 months, whatsoever. And you see the valuation. They started one of the first financing in December 2014 on a $5 billion valuation, US. Just March last month, 2016, on a $16 billion, where 420 million were invested by Chinese investors who would like to roll this out in China. So sharing collaboration it's not going away anymore. It's here, right? The fourth one, user interface, is emperor. It's more than king. And this is something which I personally, it's my favorite because I'm coming out of that age when I bought a TV and had to ask a service people to come over and actually register the channels, install it, how that actually all works together. And I was very scared when somebody else, my kids were using the remote control. If they were screwing it up, I had to ask the service again to come. So that's the time where I was brought up. User interface. We are facing a new breed of clientele, business or non-business, and these are the millennials. And the millennials are fully raised up with digital products. And basically what they see, any product which you need to explain or requires a user manual which is not user intuitive, sucks. It will not be bought in the future anymore. And it sounds very drastic, but it will happen. And that happens to your app in your app store. It happens to your exchange platform. Whatever product you do and use, and it needs explanation, scrap it. Stop it from the moment it won't work. And I tell you a little bit the examples to that. Hold on, I'm going the wrong direction. Here we go. So, for me, one of the best examples is Porsche. You've seen 1971, yesterday, the Porsche dashboard had 10 buttons. This was the car which had the most fascinating mechanical engineering power in there. It was a race car, basically converted for the streets. Absolutely stunning what the engineers did at that time. Almost 30 years later, they added up to 51 buttons and levelers on their dashboard. The car drove 3 times as fast, and they basically called it Vorsprung durch Technik. Mechanical engineering at its best. If you look at that car and you have a user manual which is 1,800 pages long, the software and the mechanical engineers at Porsche, they missed it. They missed absolutely what the product needed to look like. If you sit a mid-30s or a mid-25-year-old person into that car, he feels uncomfortable. He cannot really articulate it, but he feels uncomfortable with the car because it's not easy to understand. Yes, of course, there will be people who like the old style. They will probably buy the GT3. But again, the mass of users will not buy this car anymore. Again, because it will look like this today. And the Tesla you have heard a lot about, and there's a news article how the earnings suck and they have really disappointing numbers. But at the end of the day, their user interface, having 2 screens, no buttons, simple as that. User intuitive, as people have used their mobile phone, they understand that you don't see anything which describes the product. It's simple. And who has done it also? And it's very interesting. It's a Chinese manufacturer, Volvo, Geely. This is the only way to monitor and operate your car in the new Volvo XC90. It's absolutely visionary to do this as quick as they have done it. And now the big guys. In 2020, they have announced earliest how their cars should look like. So what I'm saying is not really a fiction anymore. They see the necessity, but they don't get it done right in time. They believe they have enough time for their users, Nissan, to have a full screen. This is the UK prototype. You see, still Audi is still having a problem of doing this in a simplified iPhone mobile device manner. And basically what you see over here, the car is not a mechanical product anymore, it's a mobile device. And that's how it's treated. And that's really what I'd like to say about user interface. And give me another one, that's a small one. Most of you will not know, it's Tinder, it's a dating app. And dating has been the most mature market ever. So everybody was jumping on that because love, as you see, passion, love, it's a big theme in every company and non-company. Tinder has revolutionized dating because of user interface. And the reason for that is very simple. They did two things. One, they looked at, what's the problem of dating? It's dirty. You need to do it fast and you don't want people to see that you're actually on a dating site. And you can do this because you swipe left and right. Left means no, right means yes. Secondly, you don't really like to hear that you're not good looking and not a nice guy. So you only match if people do like you also. It's a matchmaking. And last but not least, they use data. They basically interface free to Facebook, look at your preferences, what you have done over whatever years, and then match it with somebody else. So the likelihood that there is some overlap in your interest is very high. 3 changes on user interface, and it has become 100 million people on that site, on that mobile. It's only mobile. It doesn't exist on the internet. 60 million by now, end of the year, 100 million projected. It's quite amazing. They just changed the user interface, and not because it looks nicer. No, they solved the fundamental problem of that industry. It's dirty. You want somebody who likes you, and you want to make sure that he has the same interest. Very simple. More in your industry, B2C, Salesforce has acquired a company called RelateIQ half a year ago for $500 million US. And I don't know whether you have projects running by using your CRM, your customer data, and try to get that across the entire company on one platform. It's quite a tricky project. Guys like Mediasaturn Holding or Metro are struggling heavily using Microsoft as their supporting company, and they don't get it really done. They know Mediasaturn, Peter Haas, the CEO, says, what do you know about your customer? And he says, Postleitzahl, zip code. That's what they know. So it's kind of a tricky one. You know, if you only know zip code of your customers, it's very difficult to address their needs whatsoever. So customer relationship is a very important software tool, device, platform. However, the biggest problem is how do you integrate different set of systems, interfaces, and formats of data sets? Huge problem, and those people who have been involved at DHL in those projects, it takes years and ages. And there's another one which people have identified, that when you hire younger people, so basically the generation below 35 or 30, and you ask them, so where do you have all your your data? They don't have that in Outlook anymore. They don't have that in Salesforce anymore. They have that on their social communities, LinkedIn, Xing. That's where they keep all their relationships. So none of the platforms which we have seen have ever really found a solution to simplify that. Again, user interface solved it. If you look at, now it's called Salesforce IQ, you see over there the platforms which you can integrate. So you don't even need IT anymore. You log into your CRM, and then you link in, you give them your phone number, you give them your Facebook account if you want, your Gmail account if you want, your Exchange account, and you can add whatever account in your corporate platform you're using. You just type in your logins, and it's integrated automatically. That's it. So around 3 seconds per data set, and you don't need IT anymore. So I think that is revolutionary in terms of user interface. You make people's life incredibly easy, and you put a lot of corporate burden onto the right focus, looking at what do we actually do with the data, not how do we actually integrate that on a platform, which takes money, time, brain power, and so on. User interface. Content is king. Content is king, and we had that in the late 90s, that a lot of people, Time Warner, AOL, Springer started out, Axel Springer, by announcing that now it's the big time of digital content. Today it's actually happening, and the reason is very simple. Google is changing their algorithms so drastically that even a powerful company like DHL is not in the position anymore to buy enough AdWords to actually be more visible than your competitors in the market. You will have not enough funds, and the system efficiency doesn't work anymore. So Google has realized that very early and said, What's more important than my advertising customer is the search quality. So I want to have the best search quality, and that is defined by proprietary, new, self-designed and written content. Meaning, when you use your website not as a publishing platform, you become a publisher actually, anymore in the future. You will not be visible anymore when somebody looks you up and somebody wants to send a package, an express package. They will end up with somebody else. They will not find you. And you will see that already today in certain search words which you probably have tried out in your marketing department. But if you do this over the next 5 years and you don't have a content marketing strategy, you're fucked. You're majorly screwed. Because that's something where a lot of people don't really react. There's another one on top of it. You need to work with content because when people are over the weekend, 50% of the population is on mobile devices, whether corporate or non-corporate. And that will basically increase to 75% very soon and 50% during the week. So on mobile devices, you cannot really advertise. You cannot use the same metrics as you do. So it's content, it's sponsored content, it's interest which you can put on the screen. So content marketing becomes one of your most important ways to make yourself visible, to advertise, to make sure that whoever looks for you, whatever customer, will find you. In terms of what's important, you know, we talked about clicks in the 90s, then we talked about, then we talk about operations or actions in the 2000s. Now we talk about user engagement. How long does somebody actually is on my site, on my mobile device, on my mobile platform? And I don't know whether you have measured this on your apps, on your website in general, whether it's internal for your employees, whether it's for your suppliers, or whoever it is. It will be interesting to see because engagement. And one of the biggest engagement, again, is content, and that's rich content. So video, a mix of it, self-designed, self-written. And you see that, you see that, it's not really out of your industry, but it shows a little bit what's happening in the US and with the consumer over there. In the US, when you used to look sports, it was ESPN, which was partly owned by Hearst and Disney, so the big media giant. So that was like the Sportschau in Germany. It was, there was nothing comparable to that. Now look at the numbers over there to the left, which has been reached in a very short period of time. Whistle Sport, which is, by the way, financed by Tengelmann, by Charlie Haupt. Who looked at this business very early on and said, they're going to revolutionize sports news. And this has basically been done for a target group, again, the millennials, the future customers of sports. And it's dominating anything, whether it's football, NHL, whatsoever. And the reason for that is they have generated an interface to the customer. They have looked into their customers what they actually want, and not the other way around, which most of the businesses in the old world are doing. It's like, we know what our customer needs. It's a bit like a doctor, you know, I know what you need. Maybe applicable 10 years ago. In the future, you may have to hear and listen to your customers very, 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 very deeply. It's important. Buzzfeed, you may have heard of it. I'll just give you a little bit the dimension that you don't believe I'm just saying the crazy digital guy says that's happening. You see that over here? CBS, biggest broadcaster in the US. NBC, second biggest one. You see this one over here, CNN, biggest news broadcaster. And it's between the 18th and 34th, so the millennials, which I call them. This is TV. TV penetration in Buzzfeed, a company which was created by the founder of the Huffington Post, is the largest broadcaster in the US after 3 years of business. So think about the velocity and the timing which has changed over the last 20 years. Nobody would have thought that a guy like Buzzfeed can actually take on one of the 3-4 largest broadcasters in the US. but it has happened. So basically, the TV in that sense for that customer group, which is the biggest and paying customer group, is dead. Actionable data. Also one of my favorite ones. Data is a buzzword since last 5 years, I suppose. Everybody talks about it. We need to analyze our data, store it, put this on cloud services, whatsoever. The real problem is that still in all of our corporates in Germany, if you combine all the data, digital data, only 3% of the data is usable or tagged. So 97% of the data we just store, and we have it. It's good that we have it, and we know we can use it, but we don't. So that's a big bummer, and that means we haven't really started working and using data in our senses, and that's a shame. So I believe what will happen in the future, we will see an incredible progress in how to manage data for corporations. And the interesting part about this, you have to have an API infrastructure, so interface infrastructure, because you need to access different set of data. And I'm sure there are a bunch of highly intelligent mathematicians, other people at DHL who are currently looking at an abundance value of data and try to figure out how to monetize or use it in the sense of your customer. And that will change, and that's the brutal part of it. That will basically, the data science, once you have the data, will change to a change in your company, because your knowledge about data will lead to a change in the business. And that's probably the brutal part about it. And we've always seen it, that interfacing data, big technology problem. Data science, it's a brain problem, but it can be solved. Then the next level would be displaying it, what you call the dashboard. Can I have the dashboard and see what my data is doing? That's what you can get in every US startup. They build dashboards left, right, and center. But then you see something which your business is moving from direction left or right, good or bad, and that basically leads to change. So this is one of probably the biggest innovation, using efficiently data and also in all the framework of legal framework. It's going to be the most important. We have looked at a couple of the companies, by the way. It was in the retail business. It was a supermarket, a large supermarket chain in the UK. I can't name the name because they're just selling that business, unfortunately. They had in Minnesota, a big data farm in terms of loyalty, in terms of how the customer, what was the basket in their shops. So retail data, offline data. They digitalized that, made it anonymous, and then sold it to Apple, to Google, to Yandex, whoever wanted the data, even to competitor, by giving them an API, an interface, by saying, if you ask a question, what is the US penetration of yogurt buyer in the Midwest? You had a data pin, it cost you whatever, $1 for a request. So they developed into a data management company. They said, we have such a valuable set of data. If we do it anonymously, we sell it. And we do this automized, so we don't even have to do it. We provide an interface. So it's a service. It's actually a business. They made around, I don't know, it's a company with 5 billion in sales. They made 100 million out of data business. 100 million sales. You may say, neglectable, but with a margin, which is probably at least 50% or more. So it's an interesting thought. Data will change, and I see you what can be done at data. We're invested in a company, it's called Data in New York. Data is a very peculiar company because Twitter is invested in it, and they are the only company in the world which is allowed to put their finger into the entire Twitter data stream. So anything which is on Twitter, they can look into worldwide. And what they have done, they have created a predictive news mechanism, which means the Boston police is actually using Data to forecast in Boston where will be the next crime in what geographic region of the city, depending on Twitter. Because you can read anomalies. If you ask Twitter the right question, you can see almost half an hour, and you see that over here, and I showed that in the very sad story of Charlie Hebdo, which happened in night of January 7th. So basically, the news, you see, the news is picking up almost half an hour later, and data miner is using the Twitter stream and basically detects an anomaly and reports that to the police. So Homeland Security is using it. A lot of insurance companies are using it. People who are in dangerous regions. So at the moment, there is not any limitation to the industry anymore because you can ask the right question. And the likelihood, let me give you another example, which is probably a little bit fictive. You have an issue in one of your operations in freight forwarding in Shanghai. There's some problem over there. The warehouse burnt down. You have a fraud situation. The likelihood that this will be tweeted before you know it is probably at 100%. Let's say 99%. So if you know that a little bit earlier than anybody else before it goes into you can contain the story. You can actually react to this. So it makes a hell of a lot of sense. So the company now is at $1.5 billion valuation. Homeland, anyone who has any risk to manage in corporate governmental life is actually going to them and like, please, can you help me with the data analytics and predictives? So it's pretty amazing what data can do if you allow your organization actually to use it. And again, using it, you need to interface and you need the analytics. However, also be broad and be open-minded enough that even for a B2B company or even like DHL, it's interesting to look at the social media because social media covers a lot of things which are happening also in your business. The digital health, the last but not least trend. I don't know whether you have heard what the two founders of Google have done 2 years ago. They have allocated each privately $1 billion, so $2 billion to a project which centers around one question: how can I prolong my life? And that's what it's usually probably when very rich people think about what they can do, and I think it's the thing if you can turn the clock around, and it's probably really understandable. So what they have done is they built, and you also probably have read about this, they built this wind park outside of California, outside the 7 Mile Zone, one of the biggest offshore wind parks, which is owned by the two guys. Secondly, they put two largest commercial ships right next to this, where they enabled computer power, which is probably the most sophisticated and most powerful in the US ever been. And the reason for that is they look at genetic data of mankind and see whether food and any way of treating your body by simple way of changing your life is a possibility to prolong your life and whether there is a dependency. So it's a massive project that put incredible resources in there. So it made us think about 3 years ago, what will be a big trend, and we basically always centered it down to health. Health will be a predominant trend. It's in Asia, very, very, very important by now, but also in Europe. And you can see that by a couple of things which are happening. We have a boom of wearables that people start measuring everything, and that's all centered about finding a trend that you actually live better, more sportive, eat less, eat better. So any function of your life you want to improve, you can actually measure with that. Then you have sophisticated mobile diagnostic by far. In the US, you can go in restaurants and it basically, any cup you have, it's the vessel technology in the middle, you get to your mobile phone immediately a push, what was the ingredients you were eating, with what components, carbohydrates, vitamins, and so on and so forth. So you have that for your daily way of monitoring that you eat in a decent way. And more, you see a absolutely rise, particularly on the e-commerce side, impacts your business on functional food business globally. So functional food is you'd like to have a diet, so you get food for that function. You'd like to eat healthy. You'd like to eat sporty. you'd like to become more beautiful. Whatever it is, there is food for a certain function. And I just talked to one of the largest investors in, one of the founding investors in Facebook. He basically said the next slide to this needs to be artificial food, because that's the ultimate goal, that you basically design food organically but artificially. And it already happens that because of our limited livestock, animals, that people start building artificial proteins which taste like a hamburger and so on and so forth. It's ethically an issue, but that's where the future may go. But here, this is reality. And this reality goes into a lot of 24/7 diagnostic. It will change the way how our general practitioners, our doctors are interacting with us in the future. And this will be to our benefit, particularly when we have chronic diseases, particularly when we get older. We will have food which will basically, you know, when you have a disease and when you, unfortunately, hopefully you didn't, but if you had one, you know it always have a regime on your food intake. Then they tell you what to do, how to do this. So functional food becomes very important. Life-enhancing benefit is the ultimate goal. But also health cost reduction. We will see in the next year the first insurance programs which basically will tell us, if you give me your data, we will reduce your cost. If you will improve that and that in your regimen, you will have a reduction of this or a benefit of this. So it will be very clear interaction of the insurance business. So data access for cash benefit. You know, it's something which we should have done with Google, by the way. Ask Google for cash for any information we give to them. The last one, infrastructure free ride. It's probably one of the riskiest and part of the digitalization. Digital business tend to like infrastructure expensive environment because they put themselves on top of it and use this for free or partially for free, but do the business much better than the one who owns the infrastructure. Look at the banking industry. Look at the telephony industry. Skype. Skype used the infrastructure of Deutsche Telekom. They could have done it, but they didn't. They did it better, free, and it was an incredibly important business. Uber is using an infrastructure of existing cars, of private people. So as you see, Uber is moving from Uber Black, the classical limousine service, back to Uber X, the private person who drives around in the city who wants to earn $1 or $1 here and there. And that basically will lead to a logistics solution. They will do sooner or later, and in the US it's starting, they will ship out fresh food. Same day delivery, guys like Postmates, heavy competition to them, but potentially also to you. They will have all the deliveries for restaurants' food on their horizon. So what else will they do with that? So that's the big question. WeChat. WeChat is the biggest, and I think Deutsche Post, you also have a chat service, Zimsme or something like that. WeChat has 600 million users. It's a chat service. And in 2013, they have sent out an email, a text, by saying, I give you a red envelope to the Chinese New Year with a cent of benefit to your account if you onboard your account, your bank account, to WeChat. Within 4 weeks, they onboarded 200 million accounts directly to WeChat, which has become an alternative way of payment from account to account directly. There was no credit card, no scheme whatsoever in the middle. So they used an existing infrastructure, API to the bank, their customer access, and created the biggest alternative banking system in China. It's unbeatable now. They have logistics services now in there, they have massage services, there's everything. If you want to interact with a Chinese individual, and if you don't use WeChat, you're screwed. You just can't interact, you don't have friends. It won't work. Give you a couple examples, two more examples, then I'm done. Offline, who's using perfectly infrastructure? There's a small company in Berlin, it's called Parzahlen, Cash Payment Solutions. So basically what they do is, they tap, you can pay in your cash and pay out cash at 10,000 retailers in Germany via their technology. They have implemented the software on the DM market, on supermarket, Mobicom stores in their cashier systems. So you walk in there and say, can I pay $50 onto my account? And you have that real time on your account. You can also withdraw money, and you also can pay your invoices, utilities, whatsoever. It's a barcode on it, and then while shopping your diapers and your drinks or whatsoever, you actually pay that. It's an infrastructure for free. The retailer gets frequencies, is totally happy. They have a high margin on every payment because they have given that to bank as another alternative way of the Geldautomaten, the ATM. So it's a super way of really sitting on existing, highly expensive infrastructure. Same over here, and I talked about WeChat, and I don't want to say that again, but for me, one of the biggest surprise was when we introduced IBAN, which I never really understand why you have to torture your banking customers as tough like this. You make it even more difficult to remember that number. It's exactly what's happening in bank. They don't think about what the customer wants. They do it what the technology advises them to do, and then comes up such a screw up. Au contraire, WeChat said, we don't care about the account number anymore. We have a security algorithm who looks, when you transfer money via your chat service, $500 to another Chinese individual, they check whether that person has moved too far within the next 20 minutes, first security check. Then they check whether the people in their WeChat actually match with the other person. If a certain rating score comes out, they block the payment. So they do an intelligent security to actually match those two people, that this is a high likelihood that they actually want to interact. It's very, very smart. And the same is, by the way, is American Express is doing the same. If you do two payments and you have traveled too fast in one day, they give you a call. Physically, they give you physically a call. This is electronically. This is digitally be done, right? So that's pretty much it. Take this, please, as an open anecdotal run through which I personally believe, and we've now done this in the 10th year, and I'm holding this speech around 20 times in C-levels in Germany and Europe. And it always changes. It always been added. There is not a clear picture which will stay like this. But what I can certainly leave with you, it's probably the most exciting time because the internet for B2B businesses, the digitalization has just begun. We are at the beginning of doing this, and I think Europe has the most important role to play in that moment. We lost the B2C market to the Americans. That thing is over, done. However, we will have probably the best position to become digitalized in our own processes as corporates, in our own way to conduct B2B business. And if you look a little bit at those 8 trends and reflect that to your business, if that makes you think, then it was a happy day for me. Thank you very much.